All right, before we move on to the next thing, I do want to talk about one last little thing, though, about the recovery slider. And it's something that I kind of ran across by accident, but it's really great for landscape shots. So let me scroll down here where we've got one floating around down here. Right here. Let me go ahead and double click to open it. All right, so here we are in Camera Raw, and one of the things that I found is if you have a photo where the sky looks kind of washed out, or you kind of adjust the exposure to where it looks good, but the sky looks kind of washed out, if you really drag the, oops, I zoomed in there, sorry. If you really drag, let me get us right back to, oh, by the way, while we're discussing it, of course you can zoom in and zoom out. We're not really discussing it. Why I just brought it up accidentally is if you can zoom in and out using the Command minus and Command plus on your keyboard. On PC, it'd be Control minus and Control plus to zoom in and out. That's the keys on your keyboard. But if you want to get back to a fit in view, like the biggest view that'll fit inside your window, just double click on the grabber hand. It puts you right back there. If you want to get too quickly to a 100% view, double click on the magnifying glass to get you to 100%. Okay, back to our story. Our story was the sky doesn't look very good. If the sky doesn't look very good, you want to bring back some detail, drag the recovery slider way over. I don't mean just like over here. I mean way over, and watch what it does for the sky. Look at that. It's like the Create Dramatic Sky slider. Watch. From there to there. What a tremendous difference. I use this in skies all the time to just bring back some drama. I mean, of course, we had clipping as it was, right? So let's see where that clipping was. Well, it was in the sky. So you can bring that back, right? You can probably get that back. But if you really want to bring back the drama, keep going. And look at the difference. I mean, it just really gives you quite a bit of difference there. You can turn that little warning off so you can really see. All right, so that's my recovery trick. That aside, let's go down to the next slider. All right, so from top to bottom, we do the white balance, and we could do that here if we want. Let's just try some of the built-in ones and see what we have. Auto looks okay. Daylight looks a little better. Cloudy looks fakey. So daylight's good. It was shot in broad daylight, so let's go with daylight. Now, we could set the exposure, but we already have a problem. Take a look up here. You can already see the problem. We see that is hitting the right wall. You can see the warning is actually solid white. That means you're clipping all three colors, the worst possible situation for clipping. And if we click, you'll see where our clipping is. Whoo! That's some serious clipping there, buddy. All right, so that's a serious problem. So let's see how much we can bring back using just the recovery slider. Quite a bit. I mean, we'd have to go way over to get that last little bit, but the majority of it we've gotten just by, I mean, look at that. That was completely lost, and look how quickly we bring all of that back. All right, now, let me turn that back off. So to get the other back, you'd have to probably lower the exposure of the whole image because that's just a tiny little bit there. It's clipped on that. And that's not an area of majorly important detail. I'll probably let that go. But what I want to talk about now is the black slider. The black slider is basically the shadow slider where you control basically the shadow of the whole image and the shadow area of the whole image. And if you see a photo that's washed out, this is usually where I'll go. Because a washed out photo, it instantly says to me why it's washed out is because the shadows are just, there's nothing, there's no shadow depth. If you actually look at the histogram, it shows that. So, see that gap there? There's a little gap. Let me zoom in so you can really see. See that gap? That's not a little gap. That's a big gap. There's hardly really any data till about right here. There's a tiny little bit, but it's mostly the data is just missing. So what we'll do is go to the black slider and drag to the right and watch what it does for the photo. Look at that. I mean, somewhere maybe up here, something like that. Look at it bring back the richness that was missing in the photo. So with a couple little changes, just adjusting the exposure a little bit, maybe something like that, pulling up the recovery to get rid of the most of the clipping or the important clipping, and adjusting the blacks, boom, I mean, there you've got your image is kind of falling back in line. One other thing that I would do is maybe take a look at the brightness. The brightness slider right below it. The brightness slider, if you've used levels and you're comfortable with that, think of this as the midtones slider. It controls the midtones. So if you drag to the right, and take a look at the bar, by the way. See the bar under it? See how it's black down here and it's white up here? So it's basically telling you this side, if you drag towards the white, it's going to get brighter. If you drag towards the left, it's going to get darker in the midtone areas. So maybe something in this area right here looks pretty good. All right, so we're getting pretty much back to where we want. Now, there's also another control that you could use first, I guess I'll tell you about this. So those are the basic ones. Up here, default sets you back to your default. This is what when it opened. But there's also another one called auto, and this is what I was just about to talk about just a moment ago. The auto setting basically tries to balance the image and does a pretty decent job in some cases. However, more often than not, I find that the auto button will actually overexpose your photo. So although it can be like sometimes a good starting place, generally I wind up having to redo it myself anyway because it just makes everything look too bright. So let's just start over. To do the whole thing again, we'll set our white balance to daylight. I would probably lower the exposure just a little bit, bring the recovery up till we get that sky looking pretty good. Bring the blacks up quite a bit to where it looks pretty good. There, that's better than what auto is giving you. And then you can decide if you want to increase or decrease. Maybe we can decrease the brightness just a little bit. So I mean, there's a pretty intuitive, easy sliders. It kind of moves right down in a very logical manner. Now, so those are the basic things. So there's one slider that in this top section we haven't talked about, which is fill light, and there's one we haven't talked about called contrast. Contrast, we don't use that slider at all. Let's talk about that real quick. Don't use it. And I'll show you why a little bit later, because there's something much better than using that contrast slider. The contrast slider is way too coarse. But the fill light slider can come in really, really handy and is a lifesaver, and I'll show you that next.